From about 13,000 years ago, well, 15,000 years ago, because we're talking about 13,000 before the current, no, 13,000 before the present. It was a time of extreme changes, not just from the animals that lived, because it was the end of the Ice Age, but also as human societies. It began the Neolithic period, where humans began to diversify, and they had it was a revolution, because they were not just they were exploiting the resources the ways they have never been exploited before. During this period, the Neolithic times, the Neolithic, um, agriculture arose, which led to all other technological and social advances. Now, I have a study here which showed that humans from the area of what is modern day Turkey, or should I say Anatolia, but this is a little bit of a vague term, because Anatolia is basically north or west eastern Turkey, more or less. It falls within I already talked about this. It falls within the Fertile Crescent. Excuse me. And I've talked about that in that area. You have Chatel Göbekli Tepe, that famous temple that is from the beginning of this period, the, um, the Neolithic. But apparently, there's a study that was made early last year. It was published in the article which I'm going to read. It is published in November the 9th, 2017. But it shows, and they've confirmed it, that that Europeans, hunter-gatherers, were quote unquote replaced by the farmers that came from the east. Now, I will share the article and we shall read. Okay, here we go. So, DNA study shows that Neolithic Europeans interbred with Anatolian migrants. And a large international team of researchers, I'll just increase the magnification of this. Here we go. Has found that Neolithic hunter-gatherers living in several parts of Europe interbred with the East, the Near East, exactly. In their paper published in the journal Nature, I have the paywalled article in the description, but I also have, which I found, the same study published in Cell, Current Biology, and there's another one which is a PDF from Bioorg XIV.org for the actual study, the sources of this study which they're talking about in this article from Psyorg. So have a read. It's okay. It explains much more detail, all the minutiae, and we will discuss the article as we go along. Right, the Neolithic period, for those who don't know, is often described as the New Stone Age. That is because neo in Latin means new, and lithic means rock, stone. So yes, it is described as the New Stone Age, and that is because the New Stone Age, the humans that made the tools didn't just initially chip tools to make blades, sharp edges into. They actually ground them, so they made for example, polished axes, which were stronger than the chipped ones, and the edges weren't as sharp, because they did have the sharper blades, but the blades became much smaller, and I'll talk about them as we go along. So it was a period of human history that prehistory. There was no writing, so it's prehistory. From about 15,000 BCE, that's 13,000 years ago, from now, BC, before the current era, because you have to take 2,000 years from the BCE to have BC and AD. It's the current calendar. So in 3,000 before the current era, which started in 1955, by the way, the current era. That's just so you guys know. It is a period defined by the development of settlements. Yes, the humans began to uh, go from a um, mobile pattern of settlement or a to a more fixed. So they were less nomadic in their structure in their societies. So they settled down. They refined tools and the arts. Um, the tools, which tools did they develop? Because they were increasingly using grains, especially from the Anatolian area, from the Fertile Crescent. I already told you guys about that in the Natufian videos I talked about, and also in the Göbekli Tepe ones. So they needed to cut the grains, and what did they develop? They developed the sickles, and to make a sickles, you need to make really really small blades, which are called microliths, and they would be hafted onto a shaft, onto the sickle shaft, and they were then used to cut the grain, to cut the grasses, which were einkorn wheat and emmer wheat. They were the two main um, no, I'll get to that later, Archaeology. No, BCE is before current era. Current era started with the radiocarbon dating, and that I am absolutely correct in, because the Neolithic did not start 15,000 BC. It started about 12 to 13,000 BC. So I will say that, and I will keep until that's what I was taught in university. But getting back to the article, it was defined by the development of settlements, as I said, refinement of tools and arts. Arts, mobile arts. We know from Göbekli Tepe that they had temples. There were, well, at least that temple, and not just those. They're beginning to find more newer, some other temples, some later, some earlier, in the area of north of where Anatolia is, where Turkey is, and also from the southern parts of what Israel, Jordan, and Lebanon are, um, which are from the Natufian period. And I already talked about the Natufians beforehand, so we can go. So they, the prior research showed that the people living in what is now Germany, Hungary, and Spain were mostly hunter-gatherers during the early Neolithic period, but were quote unquote replaced by farmers moving in from the Near East. They mention Anatolia, but it's the whole of the Near East, the whole of the Fertile Crescent, for example. In this new effort, researchers suggested that interbreeding between the two groups led to the decline of hunter-gatherers. Yes, and also other factors which are not mentioned. I think they are mentioned in the article, the actual study, but if not, there has been evidence of some conflict, especially later on, because the farmer needs to have fixed land and he can't have people moving in. So moving into where they are um, growing crops or even shooting their herds, because they were pastoralists as well. So this, the end, resulted in modern Europeans are descendant from nearest East immigrant farmers, but have remnants of hunter-gatherer DNA. Yeah, fine. They also could have been trading and learning, and if you trade with these hunter-gatherers, because this, especially this period of early farming, it was not very, very reliable as it is today, or even later on in the civilizational periods, where it became much more reliable. The early phases was not very reliable, so they would have still had to probably trade it. That's just an assertion by me, but it's valid. It falls within the actual what possibly occurred then. So, to learn more of the early history of humans in Europe, I don't have to say the H word, by the way. Not this humans word, the other H word. Haha. H sapiens sapiens, by the way. And analyzed 180 DNA samples of people from early Hungary, Germany, and Spain, dating from 6,000 to 2,200 BCE. They used data from the DNA analysis to create a mathematical model, which was used to build a simulation of population interactions in an area of study. So they got the DNA analysis, and then they made a model to trying to see what would those interactions, the newcomers from the east, how they could have interacted with the local people, and that's extracting the DNA. This picture, uh, Petros bone from there. So they're taking some samples to get the DNA. Um, the researchers found that there were a lot more breeding going on between the two groups than had been thought. You know, humans tend to do that. Um, they found that the farmers moved in. Interbreeding began almost immediately. That's a good way to swap genes, of course, and not just that. Uh, Hunter gatherers, because of their nomadic lifestyle, would have been sort of isolated, and if any, to bring in any new DNA into the family groups, which were the tribes that comprise these um, these societies, the hunter-gathering societies. They were just possibly they are mostly slightly extended family groups that they needed to bring in fresh DNA. So when the gatherers the farmers may have moved in, they just saw it as a source of it's just of wives and husbands. Um, it continued for approximately the next several hundred years at all of the sites under study. Though the team reports there was a more rapid pace in Spain and Germany than in Hungary, which is I don't know. I so I don't know why. I've skipped mostly parts of the study, but I will go back to them later on. So yeah, researchers, excuse me, noted that findings make sense logically as well. It would seem far more likely that contact between the two groups would result in interbreeding. We interbred with Neanderthals, Homo sapiens sapiens, and with Denisovans, and we've always interbred with everyone we got in contact with, and so it's natural. It's normal. There's nothing controversial about that in my point of view. Um, that would result in interbreeding rather than one group simply out reproducing the other to the point where the original group simply disappeared. That could have been what the interbreeding could have also led to the fall of the disappearance of the Neanderthals. Just speculation in my part, because we don't know how and why the Neanderthals disappeared, became extinct. We don't know. So here's a middle. This is Lamina Middle Neolithic Collective, Lamina, Spain. It's a it's a settlement because you have where they have that is the hearth. You can see parts of the walls would have been sort of like a roundhouse, and also you have the caves, which were more of the burials into Spanish Pyrenees. So these are the areas, and these are the contact groups, and the paleogenomic transit reveals the complex genetic history of early farmers. You have the Iberians, etc., the Germanic tribes. The dark black ones are the Neolithic hunters in that area of Turkey. Then you have here the green, which are the Neolithic from Anatolia. So, and honestly, I know a little bit about how genetics work, but a geneticist would know much more than I do about how this works. So, yes. Here you have parts of the basically the article itself, part of it, the abstract. Ancient DNA has established Neolithic population, European population descended from Anatolian migrants, received a limited amount of admixing from resident hunter-gatherers, and so on. This is just the article in Nature. You click on that, it goes to the paywall site. But I have provided other sites. I have provided other sources which show the actual complete without being behind a paywall. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't hard to find. Just have to do a little bit of searching, googling. Google is a good tool. So that basically ends it. The sample. These are basically all the samples that they have that they got to compare with one another, and then they compare the genetic material that they extracted from each of these groups, compared it with the Neolithic Anatolian, and see how much percentage of the DNA from the East they had. And they found that basically there was quite a lot. So yes, this was really a fast one. I might leave it at that. So just gonna stop sharing. So just wanna see something here. Come on. I stand corrected, Archaeology. Yes, you were right. I was wrong. I just saw another source. I don't try. I don't. I go to Wikipedia as a quick resource, but I've found another one that sure that yes, I accept I was wrong. BCE is before is the same as uh, BC. So I was wrong, and I stand corrected. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. So we end this stream here. I know this won't give me a lot of watch time from the new YouTube thingy bobs, but I didn't swear, and I didn't say the H word, the H.O.M.O word. Haha. So yes. Read the guys. Read the sources that I've, especially the third one, not the cell, the second source from Current Biology. That even if, or you can download the last one, which is a PDF, and it is really interesting how it works. Because when I present a source, I'll go on for another 2 minutes, a really quick one. When I present a source, um, you have to look at a scientific paper in its whole. It starts off with an abstract, and it starts off with the methodology, and it starts off in the actual what they have done with the data that they gathered. So they analyze that. Then at the good thing about it is the conclusion, because then they analyze what the data means. And that is how I see it. It's very, very important to get the whole context of the scientific paper, because the whole article, the whole study follows the scientific method. You can use the methodologies to test it on another site to see if they match, and you can compare them. If they do match, then you know that the scientific that the premise, the question, the hypothesis was correct. And that's just a small indication of why I absolutely love the scientific method, because it is independent of us. We It is objective, as objective as it can be. It is. That's why I love it. So, just a little bit of a little indication of how things work in the scientific field, and that's why sometimes I feel really, it was really, I could say upset, but a bit more stronger than that, about people who don't know how to extract data from scientific papers and so on. So yes, exactly. Aposematic warning. It does not care about my feelings, and that is absolutely good. So, guys, see you till the next stream, and take care, and good night.